Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima, and I'm here checking out the new Classic mode in Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. It's a little bit weird that this exists, because the developer of this game, and the developer of the Castlevania Metroidvania games, Ega, never actually made an original Castlevania game, at least with this set of mechanics. So it's a little bit weird that he's just decided to go and make this version, although it's possible it might have just been the development studio thinking it'd be something fun to do with the assets. So they've basically taken all the resources from the original game and turned them into a classic Castlevania game. And by classic Castlevania game, I mean really classic Castlevania game. I'm talking Castlevania 1 on the NES with a couple of extra moves baked in. So for those of you who've never played those games, it's really simple. Two-dimensional action platformers. You can move around, you can jump and you can throw your whip, but you're quite slow and sluggish in this process, to the point where if you throw your whip out, you can't throw your whip out again until you've successfully retracted it. You also can jump, but once you've jumped, your trajectory is confirmed and you won't be able to come back down for air. You won't be able to come back down to jump again until you have landed in that set trajectory. You can't give yourself some mid-air control. You've also got a bunch of different enemies that move in a bunch of different ways. Some of them are infamous, such as the Medusa heads, which famously move in an S pattern. They are just designed to knock you on your ass. And the big thing about these games is, I said action platformer and I meant it, because there's a lot of platforming to do, a lot of permadeath gaps in the ground, and a lot of enemies that can knock you backwards if you so much as touch them. So there is a lot of challenge in avoiding the enemies, using the right tools for the job, and getting to the ends of the levels and beating the bosses. In fact, one of the best things about this series is its sub-weapons, because while your basic attack can only go in front of you a certain distance, your sub-weapons make up the rest, because they have the ability to do a bunch of things you can't, like fly in a high arc in the air, go across the entire screen, leave a fire on the ground that you can't, well, you can walk over it, but the enemies can't walk over it, because they'll get damaged and die. And as a result, some of the best parts of Castlevania ends up being getting a sub-weapon at a certain point, using it to get to another area of the stage, and then getting through that part of the stage successfully much easier than you would have otherwise, because the game may be tempting you with new sub-weapons along the way, and you might think to yourself, oh, I could probably use that, but if I hold onto my bone, I might be able to get some use out of that somewhere ahead that I don't know about. And getting this little knowledge of the enemies and the way that they move, the stages and where the sub-weapons are, and even things like little hidden resources like health packs or extra money or extra sub-weapon energy in the walls, is the best thing about Castlevania, because it rewards remembering where things are and thinking your way through a situation without needing to memorize how to go through an area and having to do it step by step by step by step by step to the letter, otherwise you're just going to get yourself killed. Those are usually the best parts of the game. And I gotta tell you, man, the first two stages really do take inspiration from Castlevania 1 on the NES. And I mean really take inspiration. As in, it's almost a carbon fucking copy. I am being completely serious here. The levels aren't laid out exactly the same tile for tile. The sub-weapons aren't in exactly the same places. The enemies don't work in exactly the same ways, but frankly it's so close I found myself asking, how far can you go before you get done in for copyright infringement? Because it is legitimately ridiculous just how close the first two stages are. Stages 3 and 4, while they are not that close to anything in particular from the first Castlevania games, they've still got the same enemies, they still work the same way, they just look different, and they're still using a bunch of the same design philosophies. So it gets a little bit better, but I gotta tell you, man, the first two stages of this game were quite boring, because they were so close to the originals from Castlevania 1 that it made me think, why am I not just playing Castlevania 1 instead? It just seems entirely against the point to copy the stage like for like when you have the opportunity to do something new and interesting. But they're still alright. It's still decent platforming action. It works the exact same way as the original Castlevania, and at one point it gets to, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? However, they have tried to fix it, and in a way that doesn't really make that much sense to me, because in this, you have two moves that have been ported over from well, I say Castlevania Dracula X, but they did exist in Ritual of the Night, so it's not like they weren't ported over from that. But the moves that I'm talking about are double tapping X to backflip, and the left bumper, also known as the L1 button if you're playing on a PlayStation controller, is a backstep. Which, they don't really come in any use. Because as I said before, this really is based off the Castlevania 1 level design. And backsteps are almost completely useless, thanks to how fast enemies move, how small the platforms can get, and just generally, like, how cramped in general the levels can be. So I don't know why they bothered to put backstep in at all. Throughout the 4 stages I managed to get through for the video footage that I've got here, that was basically useless. I had no use for the backstep whatsoever, because what does it do? It just means that I might need another half second before I need to jump to get over a Medusa head, or I might need to just walk back towards where I just was, or something along those lines, right? And that was just weird. I don't know why they bothered to have those 2 moves in. And then you get to stages 3 and 4, and that's where the cracks start to show, because remember what I said before about Castlevania being at its best where you don't have to outright memorize stages, but you can still come up with general strategies to do better. Like, oh, there's a boomerang here. If I get that and take it to the end of the stage, I can get past this difficult bit easier. This game, and especially stages 3 and 4, break this rule in a bunch of different ways. My first least favorite strategy of them all is having these really annoying platforming challenges really early on. And stage 4 has both of my major problems with this game just summed up, right? So, in the very beginning of stage 4, you've got a pier that you need to jump off to get to a little platform that's floating in the middle of the ocean. Then you need to jump off that onto a moving platform in order to move on to the rest of the stage. However, this first jump is so precise that you need to basically be walking off the edge before you jump in order to get onto it. And you just barely land on the edge. So it's more or less just a test of, are you not asleep? Do you know that you need to press X right before you jump off this platform? Because I had to replay the 4th stage a fair few times to try and get through to the boss. And like once in every 5 tries, I'd screw up this jump, where I just think to myself, did you really have to put this piece of shit jump in just to check that I know just how far I can jump, instead of just letting me walk over to the moving platform and letting me start the stage like normal? That's just no fun. That's just not fair. That just makes me think they were just trying to extend the game a little bit by putting a tiny bullshit challenge that makes it so that you've just got 1 less life when you get onto the boss and you need to just bang your head against it in order to understand its patterns. But the second thing I hate, and this is the most egregious part of the game for me personally, is randomized AI patterns with no tells. Because goddamn, this game has a lot of them. So a lot of the AI in this game is unpredictable. It means that you won't be able to guess where an enemy's going to go until it started moving there. In a fair few situations, this isn't really a big deal. For example, the skeleton dudes that throw bones at you. They're fine because they become alert as soon as you see them, and they will immediately start moving towards you. And while they're unpredictable in what direction they might move and where they might move to, they're predictably unpredictable. You know that they're going to be moving around a lot. You know that they're going to be throwing bones like crazy. And you know exactly how you're going to be able to avoid or stop it. And this is fine by me. This works. However, there are some enemies in this game which absolutely break this set of rules. And the main one is one that I do not recall seeing in the original Castlevania game on the NES, although I admit that I've never finished it. I always get stuck. I think it was on Frankenstein. I'd be lying if I could remember. It's a new enemy called, I don't know what it's called. It might have been in Bloodstained, but I honestly can't remember. It's been a while since I've played the main mode. So I'm going to call it a mosquito, because that's what it looks like. It looks like a gigantic mosquito. And it has the ability to move really close to you and then zoom in to strike. But it also might zoom in below you, it might zoom in above you. It might decide to just hold above your head and then go straight forward ahead of you. Or it might decide to hold and then go straight below you. Its AI is unpredictable, flat, period. And the second obstacle that you need to face in stage 4, after you get over that jump I told you about, is one of these mosquitoes. To the point where even they knew how unpredictable this mosquito AI could be, because they immediately put a candle with a sub-weapon right before him, which lets you stop time and therefore skip him as an obstacle entirely. That doesn't feel like a, oh, I'll give him this sub-weapon so he's not completely defenseless at the beginning of the stage. That feels like a band-aid for bad game design. Also, I'm just adding this in after the fact, but another thing that really annoys me about the way this game handles level design is that the run-up to the boss, especially after you lose to it, is always filled with a few enemies that you have to defeat before you can fight the boss again, which I find to be endlessly frustrating, because again, if you don't manage to take out all of those enemies perfectly, you're going to go into the boss fight at a massive disadvantage, and that also makes me want to wring some necks. And it gets even worse when it comes to, like, the halfway point of stage 3, when it comes to this set of rules, because not only do you have this game's equivalent of a Hunchback, which just jumps all over the place. The Hunchback has this really annoying ability where if you jump just slightly too far onto the third platform after the checkpoint, it can immediately bounce down on you before you've recovered and knock you off the edge and kill you. And it drives me mad trying to get through this bit, because, as I said before, you end up needing to memorize it. You need to memorize an exact set of moves to get through these rooms with as much of your health as possible. And it legitimately just drives me mad. Because that's not the best way to play Castlevania. The best way to play it is by the seat of your pants. You don't know what's coming up ahead, but you've got a decent set of tools to take out the situation, maybe a little bit of forethought would put you back into this, but you'll still be able to get through it while making a relative modicum of error. In Bloodstained, stages 3 and 4, there are multiple points where you have to memorize exactly what you should do, otherwise you're practically guaranteed to die. And it legitimately just drives me up the wall. The best of Castlevania does not do this. I've played Dracula X, the Dracula X Chronicles, which are, like, let's just say they're collectively the best game, no matter which one you want to pick. And there are so few situations like that in Dracula X and, or original Rondo of Blood, so I'm not talking about the SNES one, right? There are so many good scenarios in those games that do not absolutely rely on proper memorization. You still have a chance of getting through without getting your shit kicked in. It's low, it's difficult, but you can do it. This just kind of throws that out of the window and makes you think like, okay, I have to do this, and I have to do this, and I have to do this. And frankly, if I wanted to play a game by fucking manual, I'd go play Keep Talking or Nobody Explodes. Because that just seems like the kind of point of that. I feel like if a manual can give me strategy better than me playing the actual game and figuring it out for myself can, what's the freaking point? It's a shame too, because it actually looks pretty good. They did a good job with the resources. She feels good, Miriam I should say, feels good to move around. She really does feel like the original set of Castlevania characters. She handles about as you would expect this, although as I said, they've taken so many prompts from the original Castlevania on the NES to the point where, again, it'll feel derivative to the point of being an outright copy if you are used to playing those games. But considering that's what they were going for, they still managed to do it pretty well. And the soundtrack is actually really damn good. I think they've remixed pieces from the game as like NES-capable chiptunes, and they sound great. It is legitimately a really good soundtrack. I don't think it fits the game's theme very well, but it still does a good job of just being a nice backing track to all the action going on screen. Which is, again, a shame, because I just can't see myself playing this mode again, just because it just needs me to memorize a bunch of bullshit, has some band-aids for some obviously bad design when it comes to things like AI, and of course, it's got limited lives. Sure, you can earn some with every like 10,000 points or so, but it still means that you're gonna have to put up with bullshit like the checkpoint right after the checkpoint in stage 3, or right at the very beginning in stage 4. You're gonna have to do that perfectly every single time in order to save those lives for a boss fight. Otherwise, you're gonna get to the boss, you're gonna have no lives left, and before you've got enough time to really suss out its pattern, you've run out of lives, and you're forced back to the beginning of the stage, right back to the annoyingest hell bullshit that comes with having to memorize exactly what you need to do. And it's enough to just put me off the game entirely. I wish I could say I was more into it, because we could always use some well-designed Castlevania, what would you call them, like just rehashes? Just interesting, hardcore action platformers going on. But this has just got some bad design behind it, which just reminds me of the worst of those games. I'll let you watch some more footage in the background. I mean, if this is what you're looking for, punishing to the point of needing to memorize everything, feel free to go download it, you'll have a good time. But if you're like me, and you just like the ability to get through by the seat of your pants, with a decent amount of skill, and like not being completely brain dead on what the enemies do, instead of having to follow a manual worth of just step-by-step instructions to not immediately die, then avoid this. Don't bother, go play something else. Like Castlevania, the Dracula X Chronicles, for the 100th goddamn time. I still never beaten it! I still can't get past death. But it's not the game's fault, it's mine. And I'm more than happy to admit that. This game, not the case. This has been Blue Maxima, I'll see you all next time.